Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast where we will reassure you that football is fixable. Alright. Alright, Sess?
Alright.
I can't say alright, Dan. He hasn't bothered turning up.
No, we're the OGs. Yeah.
Yeah, he is on his way. He's going to be here in a short while, apparently.
Yeah, he's taking his time getting to the conservatory. Yeah, where he set himself up.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, you just can't rely on some people. That's why he's third in charge.
That is true, yeah. I'd like to start, actually. We make waves in the community. People steal our stuff.
You do?
And,
I see. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do, yes. In which case, yes, we do.
Yeah. This week, we've had 3 things stolen.
3?
3.
We normally get at least one a week, like you say. But
Yeah,
we've
like
had
that.
3 things.
Yeah. But not 2.
Not 2.
Not 9.
But
3.
3 things.
Yeah, so the first one, the magic number. The first one is to do with the respect given to referees because of something that we'll get into in a sec. But there was a rugby player, Joe Marler, went on TalkSport, and he was talking about respect given to the referees. And you know how long I've been going on about respect not given to...
And mentioning rugby as well.
You've
done that a lot as well.
Yeah, so... football referees, they're the one person on a football pitch that should have all of the respect, the authority, respect from everyone.
Yeah,
and
completely
yet,
agree.
Actually, they just get screamed and shouted at all the time, absolutely no respect given.
Yeah, exactly, to the point where we had to fix it. We have the Fixing Referees episode, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll get onto that a little bit later, but yeah, that one was stolen. We had another one stolen from Rory Jennings, and he was on The Club on YouTube. And he mentioned this week about how offsides, it's a ridiculous thing now where we're looking at, someone being off by a toenail.
Yeah.
And he was saying it's ridiculous because we just need to go back to the reason why offsides came in the first place.
Well, what?
Yeah. Exactly what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got that on tape.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, not tape, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. We taped it on our old tape recorders.
Yeah, we've been around that long. Yeah.
So that's the second one stolen. And the third one, our Invincibles episode, which was not the Monday before that.
A couple of episodes. Yeah, that was making waves, that episode.
That was, yeah.
That was a good one.
And then all of a sudden, last Wednesday just gone, on Rest is Football, the Invincibles topic came up.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. And,
right.
we hadn't heard about the Invincibles from them in however long we've been watching
Just
Rest is
suddenly
Football. Yeah.
Seriously, it's all connected.
It really is.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It's like the Illuminati.
Exactly. The Illuminati are involved with us, that means?
I thought they must be. They're always watching.
Yeah.
That's what it is, Sess.
Yeah, it probably is.
We are making waves.
We really are, yeah. It's not uncommon to see something stolen from us at least once a month or something, but 3 in a week.
It's getting to the point where it's clearly not coincidence.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, you mentioned the refs then. Should we... it's been a difficult week for referees, really, in this country, hasn't it? So we had... if you haven't seen the news, there's David Coote. So a video was released earlier in the week with him. Apparently this was a few years ago. So it was after...
Yeah.
It was about with Jurgen Klopp, wasn't it? And he had a video recording of him shouting and swearing and insulting Jurgen Klopp, and how they had a previous experience where Klopp was in his face having a go at him and that kind of thing, not showing him much respect. Linking back to what your point was saying.
Yeah.
But for Coote to have that, to video it, I think the first response I thought it might be like an AI thing or something, actually, when I first saw it.
Yeah, that's what everyone was saying, actually, that it can't be real.
But I think they're taking it seriously, aren't they? The PGMOL, taking it seriously and investigating it, obviously.
Yeah. But
it certainly seemed like, that's not really put the referees in good light when they're under a lot of pressure and scrutiny anyway.
Yeah.
And then I think the next video that came out was of him involved in some substances, shall we say. I don't want to go into it too much, but...
Yeah, that was even worse, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when the first video came out, someone said to me, he looks like he's on something. So maybe that was all part of the same evening or not. I don't really know all the ins and outs of it. It's just going to be investigated, isn't it? But
yeah.
Wow, I mean, it's not the attention the referees wanted, is it? When they've got all this pressure and scrutiny anyway.
Yeah, I know. I do feel sorry for the referee. The thing is, I'm still under the frame of mind that they deserve respect. What he's done is absolutely wrong.
And it's stupid as well. It's just, why would you have that on video? I'm sure, as being human, we're going to have times when we're a bit upset or frustrated or angry and we say things, but don't record it,
No, but they are human after all. And I'm sure what he said is actually probably no different to what any player or manager in history has ever said about referees.
Probably to their face even.
Exactly, yeah. They just weren't recorded as such in that way. The thing is, you can go back on YouTube and see the number of times that Klopp actually went right up to him and screamed to his face. If the referee did that to Klopp, he'd be suspended for the next week. Yeah. And yet Klopp was allowed to do that over and over. So however much absolutely what Coote did was wrong, I still think it's because of the lack of respect. And this is what that Joe Marler guy was saying, the rugby player, when they stole our idea. He was saying that he played six-a-side in this football tournament, and he just couldn't believe the lack of respect given to the amateur referee that was just doing it.
That's the thing, it's in grassroots all the way down, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was screaming and shouting at everyone else, saying you have to give him respect. And because of that, the referee kind of thought, oh, he's on my side. He kind of let his team slide tackle when they apparently slide tackling wasn't allowed. But he just kind of like let it go.
Yeah.
It didn't help because apparently they were the worst team anyway, so it's a bit of a laugh.
Right. Yeah.
But that's the thing. In rugby as well, you give the respect and then you get that respect back. Whereas in football,
a mutual thing, yeah. And that's the way it should be.
And I've always said in football, because there's absolutely zero respect to the refs, there is zero tolerance. Yeah. And then it becomes this whole, well, you've done this, so I'll do it back. You've done this, so I'll do it back. And I think
you're right. That is something that, when you think that there's that lack of communication and trust and rapport with each other, that's going to be putting the refs under more pressure to make decisions, and more likely to probably make the wrong ones as well, because they're constantly being overlooked and disrespected and not listened to and that kind of thing. Yeah. And trying to build that kind of atmosphere, because a ref really is someone who needs to almost go unnoticed in the game, but try and keep a clean game, right? And try and set the right mindset in the players and all that sort of thing. And when he's just seen as another enemy, it's just, you're more likely to get issues happening. And it's just
and there's no such thing as a good thing for a referee as well. So for example, with a footballer, if you do a good thing, say a striker, if you do a good thing, you score. Wow, it's a goal. It's something good.
Celebrated. Yeah.
If you do a bad thing, if you miss an open goal or something, oh, that's really bad. With a referee, if you do something good, it means you've let play on, or you've given a penalty when there should have been or something. You've done a good thing, but it doesn't get mentioned. It's
almost thankless, I suppose.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
It's just a thing. Whereas if they do something bad, then it becomes headline news. You've ruined the game. Let's scream and shout at them.
They're constantly in a minefield, really, aren't they?
Yeah. It's always going to be a negative.
Yeah. No, good point. In other news, it's another international friendly, says. I don't know how to. I've got to try and be professional. Go on, be professional, James.
No, it's terrible, isn't it? Because I think it's diluting our feeling of internationals. It's getting to the point where we're like,
it's just ruining it. And I think the players are voting with their feet. I think we talked about this last season when a few players dropped out of something. Now, what's this? The third international friendly in 11 match weeks of the Premier League. We're only 11 games in.
Yeah.
And what we've just seen this week is it 8 players have
9
dropped
players.
out? 9 players,
yeah. Jared Branthwaite was the 9th one.
Yeah, wasn't he called up to replace one of the 8 players? And then he dropped out as well.
Yeah. The one thing is, it's kind of going against our argument that they're not playing too many games and they're finding it easier and stuff. It's kind of going against that because they're making it seem as though it's worse than it's ever been. It's not worse than it's ever been. They're not playing more games. Some mate of mine mentioned to me, but they're having to play 2 games a week every week now, all season. No, they're not.
Well, no, they're not. And also, the fixture list hasn't increased. No. We've already looked at this.
Exactly. That's what I said to him. And I said, if that's the case, they're playing almost double the number of games as last season. That's what you're saying.
That's madness.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
One thing which is sort of compared to, say, 10 years ago, is now it's called the Nations League. It used to be just friendlies, right? Yeah. If it's not the qualifiers, which you've already had those and things, now it's the Nations League, which is basically friendlies, but they've just attached points to it.
Yeah.
And it's some pretend tournament that no one clearly cares about. No. Well, apart from a few people, apparently, that seem to go to this game.
But as soon as you get to the final, maybe it's a And for the smaller teams, I can kind of understand. It's the same as, when, San Marino won their first game in how many years.
Brilliant.
Winning a game means a big thing for them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for players as well who maybe aren't in the first team, they get a chance to go in. And that's what happened. I think Carsley is his last game, I think, for England as interim boss. And we had a pretty much completely changed side, loads of youngsters playing.
Yeah,
and it gives them a chance to.
They could prove themselves in ways that, we know what. That's why Harry Kane didn't start. Lee Carsley was saying, we know what we can get from Harry Kane. This is an opportunity to see what other people can do in his place if necessary.
Yeah. He wasn't happy though. Did you see what he came out and said? He said players should be prioritised in England. It's not right. Yeah, obviously. And
was that your Harry Kane impression?
Can I say that?
I
don't think it just shows the players are prioritising the clubs. I think that's what it showed. That we
Club
don't,
over country. And I can understand that.
If this was a World Cup, they'd have gone to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But also, I've always said that it should be country over club in terms of if you say win a World Cup with England or win the Premier League with Arsenal, you might say Arsenal. But the thing is, especially now, so much money and your life is basically connected to your club, not the country, because you don't get paid to play for your country or anything. Your livelihood is connected to the club now in a way that I don't think it's ever been.
Maybe.
So I think it just means less nowadays. No, I don't want to get injured playing the internationals if that means it affects my club where, they pay me. Maybe they have certain bonuses for the number of games they play or whatever it is. So maybe now more than ever, they're connected more to the club.
One final thing, just before we get onto the main episode. I think Dan's on his way. Yeah, I just need to give a shout out. We've got a new follower called Ali and Josh as well. They're sort of like a dynamic duo. It's like Batman and Robin kind of thing.
Okay, which one's Batman?
Ali. Ali's clearly Batman.
Okay, so he's your favourite
Josh is
Robin.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, no. But no, Ali's he's sort of helped to do a bit of promotion for us this last few days and stuff. So that's brilliant, yeah.
Well, thanks, Ali. And Josh as well, I suppose. He's Robin, so probably not that important.
Yeah, he's just there for support, really. Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers, guys. Yeah,
thanks for that.
Right, let's get into the episode.
Let's do it.
Right then, so, today's episode, we're looking at fixing recency bias, aren't we, chaps?
Yes.
We are
That's
indeed.
more like it.
Yeah.
Excellent, that's more like it.
Recent topics are my favourite.
Recency bias. Well, as we mentioned, I think in the news last week, that Salah is now he's moved up the rankings, the all-time Premier League top scorer rankings.
Oh yeah, he's definitely deserves it. He's just so prolific.
I mean, he's been brilliant, isn't he? And we were debating this the other day, weren't we, by text, and I was ranting because now. Naturally, he's going to be compared, and rightly so, he should be compared, but he's going to be put above some of those great players. Well, he's outscoring these people. So I think he's 8th on the all-time record. People above him, he's got Henry, Lampard, Aguero, I was going to say Ashley Cole then, Andy Cole, Rooney, Kane, and Shearer.
I think this is, it's not necessarily recency bias. I think this is Arsenal bias, because you're only bringing it up because he's very close to Henry now, isn't he?
No.
I think that's exactly... He's just preempting the Henry discussion.
Completely. It's the same as with Souness. I was talking about how Souness is out of date, out of touch with modern football, and he said a lot of sexist things and stuff, and James just defended him, and then all of a sudden, as soon as Souness said something about Arsenal, oh no, maybe it's time for Souness to give it up.
Yeah, he needs to. It's nothing to do with Arsenal. He's getting on now.
Oh yeah, it's just a coincidence.
But so the Premier League released this kind of poster or whatever it is on their socials, right? The Premier League's official post that it puts out on different sites, and so the Salah is now 8th on that list of the top 10. He's taken over Robbie Fowler, which is very impressive. It's amazing. Fowler, what a player he was. Yeah. What a finisher. But what the Premier League's done deliberately is not just look at goals. So it's put per 90, how many goals?
I don't know why you had to say the word deliberately there. They're not going to do it accidentally.
Yeah.
So they've deliberately
accidentally posted some stats.
Well, what they're trying to clearly say is, so they've got per 90, so goals per 90. Salah's 0.67, and he's so it's got all of those top 10 players, and they're kind of scored against all these rankings. Assists, Salah's 3rd on the assist rankings with 74.
3rd all-time Prem.
In all-time Prem, by the looks of it, yeah. Highest, this is it, by the looks of it. Per
Who's
90, on assists, only Lampard and Rooney.
Oh, that's why he's brought it up. He's
joined
Henry.
with Henry. He's joined with Henry on 74 currently.
There we go.
Per 90 assists, he's on 0.30, 0.30. And appearances-wise, he's on 273, which is the second lowest out of all those top 10.
Wow.
Henry is the only one who had fewer appearances.
Okay.
So it's comparing all those things, and it's highlighted Salah and how he fits, and it's a nice little comparison to make, and I think it sparked this discussion, but got me a bit annoyed because I think some people are now going to say he's automatically better because statistically he's scored more or per game and all that kind of thing. He's got a better ratio than, you might say, I mean, he's better than Harry Kane. He's got a better ratio than Harry Kane of goals. The only two that are better than him are Henry and Aguero for goals.
This is goals per game.
Goals per 90 as a ratio, as you were. So, so in terms of that side of things, that people are going to naturally just use these stats, and I think it's so silly to make these comparisons. It's just the modern game is so much easier in so many. We talked about it on previous episodes, didn't we, Sess? I know I'm ranting. You're both going to just live with this for a minute.
Is it easier or different?
Both. So the pitch is much.
That's a cop out, isn't it?
Don't interrupt, Dan. I'm making a point here.
Yeah, stop being rude. So the pitches, right? Which pitch would you rather play on? A modern day Premier League pitch or a pitch from about 20, 30 years ago, back in 1995? What about that sort of pitch?
Well, the grass will be really long by now, I suppose, if it's been there for 20 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't want to play on that pitch.
No.
20 years ago, I was a lot younger and could run a lot better. So I'd say.
20 years ago, you'd be like 10, wouldn't you? Aren't you the young one of our group?
I am. Yes, I am indeed.
We've got a youngster among us.
Yeah.
Makes it weird to think I used to live with Dan now years ago. Anyway, yes. So pitches, conditions, the tackles. We had we had an episode on fixing modern defending because clearly, and you agreed, modern defending is not up to the same standard as it used to be. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at you.
Yeah. What am I doing? Yeah, not necessarily standard. It's just different now, isn't it? Because it used to be hard crunching tackles, and you'd celebrate a hard crunch as much as a goal.
Yeah, a good tackle though. I'm not looking for challenges to go and hurt someone specifically, but if you go through, get the ball, if you take the player as well, but it's a clean tackle, it's really satisfying to watch, and it's something we've pretty much lost from the game. Yeah. I think Everton do it as much as anyone in the Prem now, and it's refreshing to see it.
And normally accidentally as well.
But I mean, again, that's because it's different, isn't it? It's because defenders have to play such a high line. They can't be these big, massive, hard-hitting tacklers. They've got to be pacey and quick on their feet and everything else, you know?
Exactly.
So,
and in that episode, Fixing Defending, Sess made the point about, defending's changed as well. We're now about passing out from the back, and it's about controlling. If you're lumping it forward and just rose-edding it every time you get, you're not going to score past us. That's great, but you're not. It's about everything's building attacks for scoring goals. That's the point you made in that episode.
Yeah.
And there's that. And then one other factor is the rules. The rules have been tightened much more, so you can't even risk hurting a player in any way. Yeah. If you break a fingernail, you get sent off, kind of thing. So all of these things, and that's fair enough. But because of those factors, although they're different, my argument is that players these days have an easier job scoring goals. We compared the stats in that defending episode. There are more goals these days because of all these factors. There are fewer clean sheets.
So you mentioned that he's 8th. Did you say he's 8th in the all-time
goal scoring list? Yeah.
So let's say, for example, we'll take that as the kind of benchmark to say nowadays if anyone takes stats as a way to say who's better or not, they'll say that he's the 8th best goal scorer.
Yeah.
So on that list of 10, who do you think Salah would be above?
In greatestness.
Yeah, in your idea of what the top 10 would be. Because I don't think I reckon you'd think he'd be at the bottom of the 10 probably. Because that list has Owen, Fowler.
Owen's not in there actually. Interesting.
Not in
so it's Shearer, Kane, Rooney, Andy Cole. Andy Cole doesn't get. Come on, Daniel, back me up on that. He doesn't get enough credit, does he?
He does not get enough credit. None of those goals were penalties. None of them.
That's true.
That's a good point. So Lampard as well. He's on this list, which is amazing. A midfielder, but many of those were penalties, obviously. But he was still phenomenal. Go and look at his goals, by the way. Fantastic. Henry, then Salah, then Fowler, then Defoe. So Owen's not actually on there, but Owen wasn't in the Prem for as long, I don't think, was he?
No, he was over 100 goals, but maybe he's just out of the...
Yeah, he left, and when he came back, he was obviously after the injuries and things. But yeah, so on that list, I think Salah would be near the bottom. Where he is now, really, in the bottom 3 of that top 10, if you think about all-round greatness of goal scorers.
Okay.
But that's moving away from stats. In terms of what you can do in the game, I mean, you're looking at these players here, the way Shearer would be able to score goals whilst wrestling with defenders. And he'd score a variety of goals as well with his head and from inside the box, outside the box, all that kind of thing.
Would you say as well then that if Salah played in Shearer's era or Fowler's or whatever, he wouldn't do as well as if Fowler or Shearer played now?
He would, yeah, exactly that, because either he'd have to be a winger, because we didn't have with these wing forwards back then, he'd have to be on the wing like a Beckham or a Perez or something like that, and you'd contribute some, like up to 20 goals a season. I think Perez for Arsenal got 19 one year, that was the Invincible year, and you get players like Beckham who during the treble year, Dan, he was phenomenal that year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he got tons of assists that year. He got some goals, but mostly...
But his role was really just to help contribute towards scoring, not necessarily getting the goals himself.
Yeah, that was the Cole and York kind of year, wasn't it? Where the two of them...
So give them service.
Tons of goals. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got Henry on this list, who a big part of his game was the all-round play, the assisting as much as anything. So Salah is quite... Although this shows that he's getting assists, which is brilliant, he's on 74 joint with Henry currently. He's third on this list. In that kind of era of football, his whole role would have to change. You know, he'd either be a centre forward like Shearer was, or he'd be a kind of, if you class Henry as that, he maybe an Henry Salah comparison is maybe the most close out of all of them, because Henry was kind of drifting out to the left a lot. Yeah. Salah does that to the right.
Yeah, you can compare Haaland to Shearer maybe.
Yeah,
but it'll be difficult to. You can only compare Shearer and Salah on actual goal figures, statistics, as opposed to their way of playing on the pitch.
Yeah, and the idea about... go on, Dan.
You could probably compare, because there's that transitional period, wasn't there? So you could probably compare Salah to like Cristiano Ronaldo when he was at United before he moved off to Madrid, because he was a right winger really, but it became in like an inside kind of winger forward. So very.
And when he played best at
Salah.
United, he was actually on the left, cutting in. Because they had the Rooney, Tevez and Ronaldo thing. And I remember, James, you mentioned quite a lot that he didn't play on the left, he was in the centre. I saw, those heat maps that you can get to see where they play the most. It was something like 67% of the time he was on the left for that season he scored, what was it, 42 or something like that. And I was quite surprised with that, because I was thinking... similar as you in that he spent a lot of the time in the middle, but apparently a lot of it was actually runs that he made from the left, and he was just so much faster than most people and just got in there. So only 33% of the time was he anywhere else on the pitch. That's quite surprising.
Interesting point. Yeah,
that's basically what Salah does, because he does stay on the right.
Yeah,
but he's not necessarily a winger, as in on the halfway line. He's on the right side. He normally stays quite wide and then cuts right in, so he's in the penalty box as much as a striker is, which is what Ronaldo did, but not necessarily what people like Beckham and Giggs and stuff used to do. If you found them in the penalty box, you'd be really surprised.
Exactly.
Oh, they're out of position.
Or those late runs, like Giggs would do that, and Lampard would do that. Those late runs, he became kind of famous for it in a way. But that's not really what we're comparing Salah to. We're comparing, by these numbers, there's almost an implicit comparison to the Shearers, to these number 9 style players, which I don't think's fair, but also, like I say, it's the conditions. Recency bias, the idea of this episode really is that people will see this stuff now. Haaland's another one. I know, just moving away from Salah for a second. Haaland, on so many lists, so I was sending you guys in the week, wasn't I, the other day?
I definitely didn't ignore all of those.
Exactly.
Yeah. I definitely read every single one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was because, I think it might have been you, Dan, who said no one thinks that Haaland's actually the best, do they? And I said, they do! Look, they do actually do it. So I sent you a few links. ESPN's list, best Premier League players ranked list from the Radio Times. You've got I don't even know what that one is. Bleacher Report, which is something I've heard of before.
I think it's what you use to clean the sink.
Oh, yeah, it is, yeah. On all of those lists, he's in the top 2.
Yeah.
Haaland, because people seem to think, he scores goals, it must mean he's the best player. football is so much more complicated than that.
It is much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
However, especially with Haaland, well, actually, not especially with Haaland, both Haaland and Salah, because they're both consistent goal scorers, that is something that goals is what you need to win the game.
Absolutely.
Someone like Rodri, we agreed was the best player in the world, but he's not necessarily someone you get to win a game. He's someone you get to not lose a game. And not losing usually gets you trophies, doesn't it? A lot of people say you got to have the best defense in order to be able to win.
If you can't win, don't lose, kind of thing.
Exactly. But you need people like Haaland, like Salah. They're actually few and far between now when it comes to strikers that can consistently get you goals.
Yeah, true.
In different competitions, in different teams, etc. There's some strikers that will do it one season and then just disappear. You know, like Victor Osimhen at one point was like he was supposed to be the next big thing, but then I think he went to Galatasaray or something. He's just kind of
he is. He played in the Champions League the other night, or Europe, or whatever. European thing.
So I think people like that with Haaland as well. He's 24 years old or something. He's proven in 3 different teams now in multiple tournaments that he is a goal scorer and an absolute machine. And I can't think of another striker or another goal scorer other than Salah that can actually compete with the number of goals that he does get. If it's as easy to get goals nowadays, which definitely I agree, it is easier for people to score nowadays, why is no one else doing it to the level that he is? And why have they not been able to compete at that level? And I know a lot of people say, oh, he's playing for Man City, he's got De Bruyne behind him and Foden and stuff. That's again recency biased. When he was 18 years old at RB Salzburg, he became world renowned for being. He scored like a hat trick in his debut or something in the Champions League, didn't he? And
true.
Absolutely annihilated that league. Then he went to Dortmund, and he was playing against Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig that were better than Dortmund at the time, and he destroyed the league. He outscored Messi in the Champions League, and now the first season for Man City, 36 goals, and then winning the treble as well. And you could argue in the 6 years or whatever that Pep tried to win the Champions League or tried to win the treble, they couldn't until they got him.
You could. I think it's a bit of a lazy argument. I'm not saying that's lazy from you, but in terms of Man City almost won the league a few times, won the Champions League a few times before Haaland against. They had those spells against Real Madrid and different things like that. Yeah. But it was moments in those games which you might say, oh, Haaland's got them over the line. But again, I don't think it's just down to him.
It's not just down to him.
And the conditions, even back in the German league and things like that, is still relatively modern conditions that we're talking about, not the ones that Shearer and Fowler and Henry were playing in. Wrestling defenders away and all of that kind of thing. Dan's trying to get a word. I'm not letting him.
He's still doing it much better than anybody else in today's generation, and that's the point, isn't it? Like
exactly, because I had this argument
if it was that easy to score, then everyone would be scoring as many goals as Haaland does, and they don't.
Yeah, that's exactly the same argument I had when it was probably about 10 years ago maybe, but we were talking about Messi and Ronaldo when they were in Barca and Real, and they were just, outscoring anyone by double the goals. And I remember James saying constantly to me that but it's an easier league, and they can score 3 or 4 in a game against I'm trying to think of a low
Real Betis.
There you go. God, what have you got against Real Betis?
Oh no.
Oh god! But there's a special place in James's mind for Real Betis, Haaland, and Southampton. They live in a little place,
of hatred,
But
there was always this argument that but it's so easy to score in those leagues and stuff. And I would always say back, why is no one else doing that then? We were saying at the time that Suarez was probably the best striker in the world at the time, and yet he could not compete with the number of goals that Ronaldo or Messi could. And there is definitely that argument to say they're easier leagues in terms of from 20th to 4th maybe. It's far easier than the Premier League, but no one could compete at that level. Even Ronaldo, when he was playing in the Premier League, at his best, people couldn't compete at his level. And that was when Ronaldo was 21 or something? Was he 21 when when he scored 40 goals?
I think 21 or 22, something like that. Yeah, early 20s. Yeah. He was early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of the all-time greats at the age of 21, you've got to go to Messi, R9, Pele. They're the kind of people that you compare
But again, I don't think we should. Messi, possibly, he was a bit more in the middle ground between different generations, right? As those pitches started to become perfect, it was when Messi was just about coming onto the scene, right? Yeah. And challenges were gradually getting easier and easier as he became a more sort of full-time professional player who was playing regularly. Yeah. Whereas before him,
Messi is a part-time footballer. Sorry,
not part-time, but in terms of full pro sort of thing, first team starter kind of thing is what I meant.
Going training after finishing a shift at a fish and chippy,
yeah.
Don't make me bring Michael Carrick up, Dan.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did you know he played for England?
Right, does he really?
No way.
Yeah, he played for England. Well, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, what made me think about this, and it's probably helped fuel my fury in this whole debate, is that the other day, Man City lost to Bournemouth.
And let's not laugh about that. Come on, guys.
No. Yeah. And they lost to Bournemouth. In that game, they were missing a few players, but Haaland. So during that game, he missed a gilt-edged chance. He misses sitters all the time.
Missed the penalty.
Game, he did miss. Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that was the Champions League.
In the Champions League. Oh yeah, in that Champions League.
I just get confused with all the losses.
Man City losing. But we've lost all Man City fans now. But it's all right.
This is
There'll be Chelsea fans next week anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the only times we can do it. How often can we see 3 losses in a row for City? You know?
Yeah, true. But yeah, and I was watching Haaland in that game, and there was a challenge, I think it was Ryan Christie or something, slid in. I think I texted you guys after that as well. Haaland hobbled around like and he was rolling on the floor. He's this massive, strong guy. No one can ever challenge him now. The defenders can't physically challenge him anymore, like they used to be able to against Shearer, for example. Yeah. Didn't stop Shearer scoring. But Haaland doesn't get that. He gets protected like all the other forwards do these days. And then as soon as a challenge goes in, it was a clean challenge, took the ball, but took a bit of Haaland as well, caught him on his boot. And then he's rolling around and he's off the pitch and he's getting support. I can't remember Shearer doing that, and that just made me think, Haaland, how would he deal when the challenges... Yes, okay, I see you two saying, but the circumstances are different. All you can do is be the best of your time kind of thing, can't you? I kind of get what you're saying, but I think it's harder back when Shearer was playing than it is now when Haaland's playing. These goals and these things, I think if you're putting Salah and Haaland in the table with those former players... there's a natural inclination to compare them, and I think that shouldn't be done.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely easier now, like you say, the pitches and all that stuff. We've said that before. I think when we were talking about the number of games being played, that was one of our biggest arguments, is that you're now in a position to be able to play more games and in a better condition, better performance, more consistent performance as well. But I would also say that it's only... I think it goes back to the whole intensity versus output thing again, because you can only do, like you say, you can only do as well as in your generation as you can. But then again, if you put Shearer in the current generation, then you can't necessarily say that he'll be better than anyone else, because then everyone else has progressed athletically to the point that Shearer wouldn't be able to keep up.
In which case, then really, I mean,
yeah, it's changed a lot. Like
Lineker saying how he doesn't believe it's more difficult these days, more intense.
And I agree with that. I've said constantly that intensity is exactly the same. I said 1936, Jesse Owens, his intensity was just as much as Usain Bolt in 2008 or whatever, whenever he won. Intensity is exactly the same. How much effort they put into it. Output is different. Usain Bolt is faster than Jesse Owens. That's a different output, but that's nothing to do with the intensity. Every single professional, I'm sure, has the exact same intensity.
They put 100% in based on their circumstances.
It's completely different to the output. So I think the intensity that Shearer would put into it would be exactly the same, but then the output, I think, would be different in the same way.
Maybe marginally. It's not like going to Jesse Owens in the 30s. This is 20 years ago. I mean, when the Premier League existed, this is when we had the latest, the pitches started to become a bit better. We started to have, Arsene Wenger had already brought over the new diet thing and revolutionised the league in that sense. We had a really fast-paced, high-level, our understanding of medicine hasn't evolved that much in the last 20 years on the football pitch. Yes, there's going to be improvements, but I think it's more marginal rather than Shearer. You actually said Shearer wouldn't be able to handle it these days. I think that's a bit I mean, Jesse Owens,
not that
in that sort of 100 years, 90 years, yes, there's going to be more of a jump between...
So my point... I don't think you're quite getting my point. My point is, you're basically saying that Haaland wouldn't be able to hack it 25 years ago, let's say. But I'm saying, just as much as Haaland would struggle with 25 years ago, Shearer would struggle as much as that now. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't be able to play in the Premier League or anything like that. I reckon the difference going 25 years back is enough for both Shearer and Haaland to struggle in the prospective generations.
But no, in terms of... So what I'm saying in terms of Shearer's, though, I think Shearer demonstrated more ability. So his ability to hold off, being wrestled by great... defending was better back then. Individual defenders were better back then. He talked recently on a podcast how he used to have the toughest battles were against Tony Adams. And Tony Adams broke his nose and gave him stitches and things like this. Haaland doesn't get any of that. Haaland just moans and cries and rolls over as soon as he's kicked on his ankle.
Yeah, but everyone does. That is part of the game now, isn't it? So
that's what I mean, and I'm saying the game is easier because of that.
The
game is less intense in a way because you can just roll around and control the pace of it more these days by doing that.
But with Cecil's point in terms of like comparing if Shearer could do it then to now and things like that, like you've also got to think. Cecil's point about like the intensity versus the output, and Shearer might not be able to do the same thing now that he did then. Equally, Haaland couldn't perform back then. Like I think that's a valid point. I think, James, perhaps what your real issue is then isn't about the player himself, but more that because Haaland is probably the best striker, I would say, or the best finisher at least in today's game, or goals-wise he scores the most, doesn't he? So he's rated now in the same way in Shearer's generation he was classed as the best, right? So your issue is actually more with the game now versus the game then. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that
players
kind of makes sense. It's the same as Rodri and Vieira, for example. So they're kind of people that dominated the middle, but they weren't known as the main goal scorers or the main defenders or anything like that. They were the the engines in the middle, I suppose. You could say that they were the best pretty much of their times. You could say Roy Keane, I suppose, as well. But if you put Rodri in Keane or Vieira's time, or Keane and Vieira in Rodri's time, I think they would both struggle just as much. If not, I would say Vieira and Keane would struggle more than Rodri would.
Yeah. I mean, roles have changed.
I really don't know.
Yeah, because you would say like
roles on the pitch have changed so much as well, haven't they? Like the roles of the players, like positions have changed, and what they need to do and what they're asked to do is so different to what they used to be. You know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's just in terms of. So we're talking about. So Salah's now, in that top 10 rankings, and on those other bits that I sent you, that Haaland is now considered either the best or the second best on so many different rankings, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, well, on top of this point, the more recency bias there, but also is that because he's scoring goals and he's in our mind, that recency bias, we're thinking of him, oh yeah, he's the greatest, we're seeing him as one of the best around and that kind of stuff. Let's play a little game. Let's play all-round best. So it's not just best goal scorer, best player, all right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Haaland versus De Bruyne. Who's the better player?
I was talking about this with a mate recently. So when comparing players from different positions, I think the best way to compare it is, say, for example, you want to create a team, but you've got no one in your team at the moment. And, like at school, everyone lines up. Who do you pick first?
On the playground.
Yeah. So instead of saying, Haaland's a better goal scorer than De Bruyne, you don't talk about that. You just talk about who do you pick first?
Who's the first player? All right, then. Yeah. So who do you pick first on the playground? Haaland or De Bruyne?
Are we talking about De Bruyne now? Because I would go for Haaland.
Okay, good point. De Bruyne 3 years ago.
Okay. De Bruyne.
Yeah. De Bruyne.
Haaland or Rodri? Before he got injured.
Yeah.
Haaland or Salah?
Salah.
Salah. Yeah.
Salah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Salah's not 1 or 2 on those lists, by the way. Haaland is. Haaland or Shearer then? Considering the different circumstances, we're sort of changing the backgrounds.
Yeah. Wait, this is literally just if they're lining up at their peaks.
At their peaks. Like on FIFA, you can pick the legends and stuff.
Yeah.
So who would you pick, Haaland or Shearer?
I suppose if it was a peak Shearer, I've seen Shearer's career, so I'd go Shearer.
Dan?
I'm going to say Haaland.
And I don't think that's a crazy thing, because Haaland's 24 and he's been asked to score loads of goals and he's done it. And
Shearer didn't play in a machine like Man City, who were already winning Premier Leagues. Shearer made Blackburn win the Premier League with 30-odd goals, whatever it was. And they were insane.
They already had a great team.
They did build a good team, but it wasn't the team.
But that's exactly the same argument that you had about with Haaland. Shearer winning them the
They did have a lot of investment, but not to the same extent Man City do. And Man City were already winning leagues.
Yeah,
Shearer
it wouldn't be to the same
line.
extent, because the money's different now to then. Like, in relativity, Blackburn at the time were today's City in relative amounts to the money that was available then to the money that's available now.
Shearer at Newcastle then. Newcastle
didn't get them over the line.
But the goals he was scoring, would Haaland do that in a team that was relative to Newcastle's strength then? So at the time, Newcastle were fighting around...
I would actually say yes, because he did that with every team.
Not in the Premier League, he didn't.
Well, yes, Haaland, he has. He's destroyed the Premier League record.
At Man City, that's different. So, Haaland or Van Nistelrooy, Dan?
Oh, he's just like Southampton, isn't it? It's just so anti-Haaland.
Obviously,
Haaland or Van Nistelrooy, Dan?
You know what? Just Haaland.
Haaland or Scholes?
Paul Scholes by a mile. Like, yeah, you got me there. But no, do you know what? Do you know what I think the issue is, actually? I think the issue is that people are too quick to try and judge an entire career. So you're talking about players as the best players of their generation, Alan Shearer and what, Cole and
because they're saying Haaland is the best in things, and he's on these lists.
Yeah, so
Salah's now on this list,
and that's what I'm saying. I agree with there being an issue there. My issue is that they're trying to say Haaland is one of the best of all time before his career is over. They're basing
that's a fair point.
Yeah,
I think
the only person that
3
you
years.
really could have done. Yeah, the only person you could have done that at the age of 24, like Arsene Wenger did when he was asked who's the best player in the world, or who's the best player of all time. I think he said was Messi when Messi was 24. And that was Arsene Wenger that said it, who's, if he says something, then you usually take note of it. Unless, obviously, when he's working for FIFA or whatever, and he comes out with these crazy things.
Yeah.
But, Messi's probably the only one in recent times that you could have said at the age of 24, it could be.
There's actually a good case for it,
Yeah.
I think Dan's made a good point there, actually. That should be one of our fixes we'll get to, is don't compare these players until after their careers.
Yeah, Haaland's got arguably 12 more years.
Yeah, I mean, so James, right?
Exactly.
So say Haaland repeats what he's done over the last 3 years consistently for the next sort of 9-10 years. Like, how then do you rate Haaland, James?
I think that's where I'd have to look at the evidence at the time, isn't it? That's what we're saying. I'm not the only
we'll come back in 10 years.
Yeah, let's come back in 10 years. Well, we'll be even more global then.
That's true.
Shearer, on one of his podcasts, was recently asked I think by Micah Richards, how he would do in this current Man City team. And Shearer said he would score tons more.
Lineker said the same as well, I think. They would really enjoy it, basically.
There you go. So I'm not the only one who thinks this, that the system these days is geared for goal scorers, that it's made easier.
Oh, absolutely.
So Haaland is being made to look better, so he should not therefore be compared to players from back then.
So this is the problem I have. So this is one of my fixes, is that by your argument that everything goes back to it was tougher back then and stuff, that basically means in your mind no one can ever be thought of as the best anymore because they didn't play 20-30 years ago. So as soon as, even if Haaland scores 50 goals a season, every season for the rest of his career, the argument will always be, but he didn't do it 20-30 years ago, so he can't be considered the best.
I think what you make a good point then. So comparing those players is wrong from both sides. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to compare to those previous generations. Dan and I had a long debate a couple of weeks ago about how football's changed. And we talked about it in our boring football episode, right?
Yeah.
That suddenly creativity, it's not about individualism, if you like, that individual creativity. Players are now increasingly being made to fit a system. And every part, Man City's way, Arsenal's way, is about managing every segment of the pitch. And then what Dan said, and you can vouch for this, Dan, is that that's a bit of a sad thing for football, isn't it? That actually you're taking the genius out of individual players. We've said it in the past. I think Bergkamp would struggle in this era.
Yeah.
It would hinder his creativity. Scholes would probably struggle in this era.
Yeah.
So
would they?
Our favourite players.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, I suppose, or like the counter argument to that is, are the players just not as good? Like, is it in today's era, the reason managers can play this system and be very specific with these people is because these players are more like athletes than they are footballers with footballing ability. Like, maybe that's a point. Like,
it's a very good point, because it's something that Michael Owen was kind of mocked for when he was interviewed by Simon Jordan. I think it was. Yeah, and he said that footballers nowadays, they're basically athletes, whereas in his time and before, they had to be actual footballers.
I remember you bringing that up. I think it was last season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned it. And and I think in that same chat, he was saying he believes he would score even more goals today.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing we've been getting onto. But at the same time, although I still believe that it's easier today, I would think it's easier to adapt. Vieira and Keane, could they become more of a Rodri, where they're trying to break up playing, almost, you might give a foul away, but be more subtle with it, rather than adapt? I think that's easier to learn, rather than to learn how to suddenly know how to hold off two defenders and be able to chest the ball, head the ball, and link up play, and all that stuff that used to be a bit more creative and in the moment back then.
I think a really good measure of it is how Messi is still having quite a successful career, and how he can still play on a pitch at his age and still look like he's a step ahead of everybody else, because he's a footballer.
And even though he doesn't fit into a system, does he? He's allowed to float around that system.
He is the system, really.
They build the system around him because he's that good.
Yeah, because he's a player. He's the genius. Good enough. Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, he's probably one of the last remaining footballers. So, like,
I think maybe that's it. I think we are now in an era where it's the death of the football genius, isn't it? It's there's no more football geniuses really anymore. And they're not being bred either, in a sense. The way they're being coached from a young age.
They're actually being coached out of individualism, aren't they?
Yeah.
If as a kid, probably now. I think we said this before. Imagine starting to get into Sunday League and stuff now. We probably enjoy it less, because we weren't necessarily individualistic players, but we weren't players that stuck to a rigid system
we were
and did
restricted
something over and over. Yeah. We were entrusted as players of a certain position to play our own styles.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I don't think you'd be allowed to do that.
So I think one key fix then is what we've established is we should not compare at all. So even though Salah's in this top 10 goal scorers list now, don't compare him to Shearer, Henry, Aguero, Lampard, and so on.
Yeah, because that's compare the stats, obviously.
Yeah, you might say but we need to understand. But people don't realise that you need to understand the differences in the context, and you shouldn't say, well, therefore that player is better. We need to. I'm going to put this out there. The other fix for me is that separate goal scorer and best player as well. That doesn't necessarily always go hand in hand.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I agree.
That's true.
I remember seeing something recently which is showing how we are demonstrating recency bias as well by talking about Shearer. It's not right. Look at these top 10 players.
Yeah, poor Jimmy Greaves.
You say Jimmy Greaves.
Dixie Dean.
Dixie Dean.
Yeah.
So the highest
Everton legend.
English. He is an Everton
legend.
Literally
a legend.
He actually is.
Finally, I've got an Everton legend.
That's an actual Everton legend.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Dixie Dean is the highest ever goal scorer in English league history.
Yeah, I think in the league alone it was like 63 or something. 60?
That is insane.
63?
But he holds the record for the most goals in a season with 60. He scored 60 in a season, set in the 1927-28 season, and his 310 goals scored for Everton is still a record for most goals scored for one club.
Yeah.
And he also holds the record for the most hat-tricks, both overall and in a season. So that draws it to a close in the sense that we've been biased because of our We've been recently biased in football because all time, if we go back across the whole history of football in this country, Dixie Dean scored 349 goals in the league.
What a great way to end this with an Everton player.
An actual Everton legend, and proving that we've all just been biased as well.
Yeah, and what a name, Dixie Dean.
Dixie Dean, great name. I think it's time to think about some fantasy football with John's Juicy Tips. Juicy.
You've got one hell of a tip, John.
John's Juicy Tips.
Yeah.
Alright, today's Juicy Tips are fancy fruit salad of a selection. There are 5 teams to choose from for your salad, with favourable fixtures right up to the new year. You've got the premium fresh mango and pineapple of Arsenal and Chelsea, as well as the bargain tin fruit of Brighton, Wolves and Bournemouth. So, here are my 3 picks. In defence, it's time for Arsenal to start racking up those clean sheets again. And the safest and cheapest route to those points is David Raya in goal. But also, watch out for Tomiyasu, as he may take Ben White's place in the team in the coming weeks. In midfield, a real differential is Jorginho Rutter for Brighton. Prior to their tough games against Man City and Liverpool, Jorginho had returned 3 assists and 2 goals in only 4 games, and I expect that form to return. He's only 5.6 million, so really worth a punt. And up front, it's a sweet Brazilian banana of Mateus Santos Canario da Cunha for Wolves. He really is at the heart of all of Wolves' attacking play, and is on a hot run of form right now. Juicy.
Thanks as always for that, John. Thanks everyone for listening. Do please like, subscribe and follow and all that jazz. And it's goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me too.